In this lesson, we'll be learning about queues. Queues are used in the 3CX phone system to route calls to multiple people. These are referred to as agents. These calls could come from anywhere that's able to make a call, internal or external, doesn't matter to the 3CX phone system. In application, queues are commonly used for sales and support groups where quick response is needed. When someone calls the number, they are connected to the first available agent. There are a lot of options for how a queue is configured, but that's handled on the server, so not something you need to worry about as far as this queue agent. But that's handled on the server, so not something you need to worry about at this time. Note here, remember that queues are different than groups. Groups are used for organized extensions, while queues are used for handling calls. To log out and in of your queues, use the availability menu at the top left. So click here. When you click Log into Queue, you'll note a queue is added to our extension. This means we are now logged into all of our queues. We can also go back and log out of queue and takes us out of our queue. You can configure which queues you want to view and work with by clicking the three dots, clicking Settings, going to the drop-down, clicking View, and scrolling to the bottom and select Queues. Note this will only show your queues that you're a member of. You may have other queues on your server, but you won't see those unless you've been added to that as a member. When you're only receiving calls from a queue, you can stay in just these two menus with the presence and a dialer app. If you need to handle these calls, or if you're like a front desk worker, we can click in the panel and maximize this to be easier to work with. We can see all calls coming into the queue, and we can sort and transfer them as necessary. Example of this, we're going to have a call coming in from my test lines. And see, we have this call coming now and dropped out. In this case, we have no availability agents, so it just says on my side, you have no available agents, and I get into the call. That can be configured to be handled different ways on the server side. So log ourselves back into the queue, and send the call again. So now we can see our dialer app popped up and said, we have a call coming in, how we want to handle it. We can answer it, we can decline it. In this case, you can see the call coming in. Rotating means it's waiting for some action. It came from here. It dropped on the 800, so that's our call queue number on the front desk queue. It is there. I call it front desk queue. Our time on it, and what it's doing. External call, waiting in the queue for something to be done. You can see here, this is actually where it's connected to us. So this queue has called us, so you can see it's waiting on us. So it's been 40 seconds in the queue, and 10 seconds rotating on our own extension. From here we can answer it. So now it's dropped directly on us. I'm going to mute so I don't hear myself. There we go. And now we can do something with this. Do we want to transfer this? Do we want to drop it? So in this case, we're actually talking to this person. If we were a sales organization, I'd say, hello, thank you for calling John. How can I help you? And we would handle it as any other call. We could, in this case, go, I'm sorry, you've got the wrong department, or do you want to reach someone else, or what have you. I can transfer it. Ask us, where do we want to transfer this? Okay, actually, Hawking is the right person for this. Type the name in. It gives us the option, do we want to transfer it to Hawking directly, or to their voicemail? Well, we know Hawking's not in the office right now, so we can click voicemail. And it got straight to his voicemail. Alternatively, we can also tell it to go to the person, and it will show up as an intended transfer. That's handled in a different lesson. So in this case, we still have our queue up here. You can see, in this case, we have all queues showed. So you can show individual queues, so just our call queues, or queue calls, I should say. Individual queues, you say just our front desk queue. These are the members of the queue and who's logged in, logged out. In this case, only we as Albert Einstein are logged in. How many calls we have answered, how many calls we have abandoned. Abandoned means a call came into the queue and no one answered it, including us. It just means they came in and nothing happened. In most cases, that's kind of a bad thing. Also show our total talk time. You can see we're logged in, we logged into the queue at this time on this date. We've handled this many calls or abandoned these calls, and how long we've been talking. You also show our other extensions. We'll see with this extension. So we have different, or this call queue. So we have less people on this one. You can see we are also logged in this call queue. We've had no transfer, no talk on this one. also have a wallboard. The wallboard is part of the queue system, so you can have this on a display on the wall, so it can show just varying pieces of information depending on how you configured. But generally, the time, how many calls are in waiting, how many agents are busy, the total calls handled for the period this has been set up. So you can actually just set this to reset daily, hourly, weekly, monthly, never, depending on how you want it configured. Your callbacks, so in a call queue, if it's configured in the queue on the 3.6 server, you can have it set so that if there is no answer at a given time, or even immediately, it can say, do you want us to call you back instead of waiting in line? So that they can type in their number. As soon as the agent is available, it will automatically call from the 3.6 system out to that person and connect them. You'll see our answered calls, our abandoned, and the average waiting time for callers. You also break that out, so if you want to have it in its own window, go back over to all, so you can break each of these out so you can see multiple queues at the same time. Kind of depending on what works best for you. So showing our queue calls again. So instead of when the individual queue, as on the right here, and it gives you some stats quickly so you can see what you want to do with them, you can show just queue calls. These are queues where calls come into your queue, or all the queues that you are a member of, which are logged into, and who else is doing what. So while queues look fairly complex, they're really not that hard to use in practice. Generally, as an agent, that being the person that is a member of a queue, you'll want to log into the queue and just wait for calls. Once a call comes in, you handle it as you would normally any other call. And when you're done, you hang up. At the end of the day, or when you're going to lunch or something like that, just make sure you log out from your queue so that you're no longer receiving those calls, because you don't want those calls dropping onto your extension and you're not there. Otherwise, they're fairly straightforward to work with. They have some configuration depending on if you want to do something particular or something specific or something on the server side, but that's kind of not what you need to do in your day-to-day.